Hello there. Welcome to another week of Fresh with your host, Nia Malika Dixon. I'm an independent writer, director, and producer here in Los Angeles. I'm originally from Baltimore, and I am a Black Muslim woman. And this week, we are continuing our series, Story Labs, talking about TV series and story. And this week, we're going to be talking about The Nevers, which is on HBO Max. And before I begin, I would like to just start off by saying I really wanted to like it. I really did, because I like action adventure, especially that which is led by a female cast. I love fantasy adventure, and this was it wanted to be that. It, to me, The Nevers is fantasy feminism, and what I want to do is just jump right into it because I don't want to waste any time. First of all, this series is all about storytelling, and I am not a critic. I don't want you to think I'm a television critic. I'm a storyteller, and more than anything, I love being an audience of story as well as creating story. And today's show, The Nevers, which is on HBO Max, is a female-led fantasy action adventure series that is based in the past. Sorry about that. It is based in the past, in the 1800s, and honestly, I really wanted to like it more than I did. And the reason why I didn't like it as much as I wanted to is because it was missing some things for me as an audience, some story elements that were definitely necessary for me to keep watching. So as a storyteller, I understand the basic elements of story, and most of the time, if you're missing some of those elements, you can make up for it with some, spectacular special effects or some fight scenes or whatever, and then build out your story from there. However, that never happened. So let's just jump right in. So The Nevers is a fantasy feminism action adventure story set in the late 1800s at the turn of the century. And it is about these group of people who have been touched. And that's the name that they call themselves, the Touched. And it's this mysterious element that, based on the television show, came from nowhere, out of space or whatever. And that's one of the things that kind of puzzled me, because there's no clear-cut story world. And so that kind of took me out of the story a little bit. And then another thing is that there's no clear-cut main character. And, I want to believe that the main character is Mrs. True, the widow who heads up this orphanage. However, her partner seems to have more compelling character development than she does. So it's not quite clear to me as an audience who the main character is, who I should be rooting for. And that's one of the biggest problems with the story. So basically, the bottom line for storytelling is that a story at its heart is about a main character, a protagonist, your main protagonist. No matter how many people are in the cast, there's usually one character that stands out who we as the audience want to follow along, we want to root for. And at the heart of it, this main character, the main protagonist, has to learn something, overcome something, deal with something internally that manifests itself in the plot externally. So there's a connection between the main character and the plot that's going on. It's more than likely connected to the main character's needs, something that they need to discover about themselves, something that they need to learn about themselves in order to move forward, something they need to do to grow. And most stories intertwine that with a want. So there's something that the main character wants and needs, and that's something that keeps us following along and wanting to find out what happens next. And with this story, The Nevers kind of suffers because we as an audience don't quite really get to know what the main character needs to learn or overcome. And we don't really know what the main protagonist's goal is. What does she want? Most of what's going on in this story is a lot of special effects, There's a lot of superpowers because of the characters get these powers. And then there's a metaphor in there, I'm sure, that's reflective of current society, whereas people are different, there's diversity, and we need to accept people for who they are. And that's just not coming across very clearly to me as an audience member. And if you were watching here with us on Fresh, when I talked about Shadow and Bone, it was totally the opposite. I really dig how in Shadow and Bone, you right away know who the main character is. It's Alina. You right away know what she wants and what she needs, and you're on this journey, on this adventure, and all the special effects, the fighting, the superpowers, they're there to help buffet the story. In the Nevers, it doesn't quite feel that way. It feels like spectacle. The superpowers feel like it's spectacle. It feels like there are a lot of scenes where you as an audience, I'm going to speak for myself. Me as an audience, I'm watching and I'm like, why am I even watching this scene? Like, I'm not even interested in this. What's going on? And as an audience, you don't want to be there. You want to turn the channel and find something more compelling. Now, as a creative, there's a lesson to be learned. And I'm not just knocking the show because I like to knock shows. Like I said at the top of this video, I'm not a critic. I'm a person who enjoys stories and I love watching stories. So I really wanted to like the Nevers. But here's the thing. We as creatives can learn from shows like this. So whereas the main character, Mrs. True, we don't really get to know what she wants or like what she needs to learn or grow or whatever. This is something we can take notes on. So when you're creating your story, make sure your main character has a clear-cut need. We know exactly what they want. We know exactly where they're going and what they need to accomplish to get there. And then connect that to the external plot. All the spectacle is great. Superpowers are really fun to watch, especially when it's a woman who's empowered. Now, let's talk about one of the characters who I really like, Bonfire Annie. And I really wish they'd given her more screen time and more story, because she's a compelling character. She's very complicated. At first, when we first meet her, she's partnered up with the quote-unquote villain of the story. And that's another thing. The way that they've set up the main villain, it's kind of iffy. Like, this woman escaped from an insane asylum, so she is definitely not somebody who I would, immediately call a villain, because she's mentally challenged, right? So on top of that, the only clear-cut, quote-unquote, villain is Bonfire Annie. She's smart. She makes some really great choices. She's complicated because, in one scene, she says to Mrs. True that she stopped hanging out with the main villain because she had a purpose. So it was not like just being a villain for villain's sake. So in episode 3, it opens with her destroying opium shipments. And the reason is she wants to disrupt this white cis hetero male who's like this gangster who's running opium, his sales. So we immediately know why she's doing it. We immediately root for her, even though in the beginning we met her as the villain. Me as an audience member, I was like, yay, more power to you. And then here comes the quote-unquote main protagonist, Mrs. True, who's trying to recruit her to join her in her mission. And Bonfire Annie says exactly what I, as the audience member, says. What are you like partnered up for? Why do you have a group of people? What's your mission? We don't even know what you're after. And that's exactly my problem with the show. I don't really know what her mission is. And then another character says the same thing. So it's evident in the show that they really don't have a clear-cut agenda for this main character. So that's where it lost me. What I want to do now is just to shift, because I don't want to be all negative and talk about how it's bad. Because, like I said, we as creatives can learn from that. So if you're crafting the story, make sure your main protagonist has a clear-cut goal, a clear need, and it's connected to the external plot. So it's not just spectacle. We're not just watching a sex scene for the sake of sex. We're not just watching a violent fight scene just for the sake of fight scene, right? So a show that really does this well I mentioned Shadow and Bone, but today Loki premiered, which was perfect. Like a supernatural action adventure television show that gets it right. Right? So we meet Loki. He's got this clear-cut need. We already know what he needs. He needs redemption. He also has a clear-cut goal. He wants to get free. He wants freedom from the TVA. So, like, right away, you know exactly where it's going. And then before you know it, the episode is over and you've gone on this adventure and the 60 seconds have gone by in a blink of an eye and you're just, like, wanting more. And that's pretty much what I wanted from the Nevers, which I never got. So I just want to like reiterate to us as creatives that we can not only learn from this, we could take notes from both series. So like, for example, The Nevers. It feels a little incomplete because we're not quite sure what the story is and who the main protagonist is and what she wants. It feels like the story is full of holes. So make sure when you're crafting your story, there are no holes. We as the audience are along for the ride because we know exactly what we're in for. And it has a clear-cut goal for your main character. The Nevers doesn't. The Nevers is pretty messy with the characters. Like we meet all these different characters, but we don't really know how they fit into the whole dynamic of the story world. So you have to have this really rooted, anchored story world. Don't forget that the external plot has to connect to this main character's goal and what they need to accomplish and what they want to accomplish. So with the Nevers, we don't really get that. We get a lot of spectacle that stands in for story element. You don't want that. You want to make sure that your story unfolds in a way that keeps your audience guessing and wanting more. And the way that the characters connect to one another, it's more a web of story, so that not just the main character gets the spotlight, because all the rest of the characters are rooted in the world as well. And you know, Shadow and Bone did a great job of that with Mal and Alina and the Crows, and so does Loki. And when I was watching Loki this morning, I was just enthralled because, you know, even though we know the backstory for Loki, the rest of the story is still compelling because there are these little Easter eggs that give us a hint as to what the character is about to accomplish, what the character is in for, the action and adventure that's coming up. And that's something that you want to do because you want your audience on the edge of their seat. You don't want them looking at their watch like, hey, we're 15 minutes in, what's this story about? Where are we going? Right? So to recap, make sure if you're drafting your own story, your character has a clear-cut goal, a clear need that is connected to the external plot in a way that makes sense. You want to make sure that the story unfolds in a way that doesn't give everything away, but leads us on a journey so that we want to know what's going to happen next. You want to make sure the characters interact with each other in meaningful ways. And I'll give you an example. When I was watching Loki today, one of the actresses, thank you for joining. Thank you for joining, Nikila. I hope I said your name right. One of the actors in Loki today, she really made an impact, even though she was just a soldier. Even with those simple lines that she exclaimed, we get to know who she is as a character. She's no nonsense. She has no patience for Loki. She definitely has a goal, and she wants to make sure that she gets her job done. Versus Owen Wilson's character, I think his name is Mobius, and he wants to meander and get to know Loki and get Loki to get to talking and tell him a little bit more about him. And so you see the dynamic between these two characters and how they have conflict. Even though they have similar goals, there's still conflict. And then, of course, Loki is the main protagonist. We know exactly what he wants. He wants to get out of there. And also, he needs to learn a few things about himself. And we as the audience get to know that as well. So make sure if you're creating a series that stars women in the lead and it's action, adventure, fantasy, sci-fi, that it's not just spectacle, that the characters are rooted in something real, that we as the audience want to root for them, that we can connect to what they're going through, and you want to keep us guessing. We want a story. Like, we want to have fun. We want to go on this journey with this character, and just having fight scenes and people blowing things up is not as entertaining as y'all think. right? You need to couple that with some real story time. All right, so just to recap, The Nevers on HBO could be better, but it's just fantasy feminism, just a lot of spectacle. Bonfire Annie and the actress who plays her is standout. She's pretty dope. She could definitely have her own show. I would watch that. Just based off of what they've given her so far, those little snippets, I'm already hooked on what she has to say and where she's going. Make sure that your story is not full of holes like the Nevers is right now. And make sure that your character has a clear-cut goal and a need that we can relate to and keep us guessing. And so that's it. Don't use spectacle as a stand-in for story. Story is all about the main character and their goal and what they need and how that connects to the external plot. And it can be fun and it can be full of adventure if you make it work. So next week we're going to talk about a different show. So far we've done comedy, we've done drama, we've done action and adventure, and I believe next week we are going to be doing another drama, I May Destroy You. Now, if you haven't seen I May Destroy You, it's also on HBO Max, and it's Michaela Cole's series, and I'm just going to tell you right now, it's phenomenal. So get ready to talk about some really great drama, some really great story elements, some really great character development, and all of these things tie in to make this a great series. So if you want to know what makes a great series for an audience as well as for a creator, join me every week for Fresh, where we're going to be talking live at 5 p.m. Pacific time every Wednesday. And actually, I'm going to change the time because I've recently started a program that meets at the same time. So I have to shift. So what we're going to do is, instead of 5 p.m., we're going to do 4:30 p.m. Pacific time. So meet me early. And next week, we're going to talk about I May Destroy You, Michaela Cole's amazing series on HBO Max. And I look forward to talking with you. And listen, if you have any comments about the Nevers, please do share them. I really want to hear what you thought of it, if you got a chance to watch it, because I know I'm not the only one who had issues with it. Come on now. And then if you really liked it, please tell me what worked for you, because I'm dying to know. And as creatives, I know that there are other people who are really interested. So if you've got some positive things to say that you enjoyed from the Nevers, please do message me so I can share them with the rest of us. And then we'll talk more. All right, so I will see you next week live at 4:30 p.m. Pacific time. And we're going to talk about I May Destroy You. And I look forward to seeing you then. Have a blessed week. Bye.